Captain Sarah Chun stared at the navigation console and sighed loudly. The red warning lights blinked across the screen like angry Christmas decorations. And the hyperspace drive made sounds that definitely weren't in the manual. "Well, that's just great," she muttered, tapping the screen with her finger. "Murphy, what's our position?" First Officer Murphy Rodriguez looked up from his own console, his face pale. Captain, I think we might have a problem. The navigation computer says we're nowhere. Nowhere isn't a place." "Murphy, I know that, but look at this." He pointed at his screen. "According to our instruments, we're in empty space, but according to my eyes, we're surrounded by the biggest structures I've ever seen." Chun turned to look out the main viewport and felt her stomach drop. The cargo freighter Murphy's Law floated in the middle of what looked like a massive construction project. Ships the size of small cities moved between metal frameworks that stretched for thousands of kilometers. The structures gleamed silver and blue in the light of a distant star, and they hummed with energy that made the hair on Chun's arms stand up. Chun said. "That's new behind them." Engineer Lisa Park looked up from the engine diagnostics captain. "The hyperspace drive just had what I can only describe as a nervous breakdown. We jumped somewhere, but the computer doesn't know where. Can you fix it?" "Give me a few hours and some coffee." "We might not have a few hours." Communications Officer Jake Williams pointed at his screen. "I'm picking up multiple contacts approaching our position fast." Chun watched as dozens of ships appeared on the scanner. Each one was bigger than their entire freighter, and they moved with the smooth precision of military vessels. The lead ship alone could probably carry their entire mining station in its cargo hold. "Are they trying to talk to us?" Chun asked. "Yes, ma'am, incoming transmission." "Put it on screen." The view screen flickered to life, showing what looked like a cross between a giant spider and an angry lobster. The creature's multiple eyes focused on Chun, and when it spoke, its voice came through as a deep, threatening rumble that the translation system rendered into English. "Unknown vessel, you have violated Imperial space and disrupted sacred construction zones. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences." Chun looked at the alien for a moment, then turned to Murphy. "Do we have any paperwork for this kind of thing?" "Paperwork? You know, like when we accidentally flew through that Navy exercise near Jupiter forms to fill out. Fines to pay, that sort of thing." Murphy stared at her captain. "I don't think this is the same as that time with the Navy." "Why not?" "We're in the wrong place. They're upset about it." "Seems pretty similar to me." Chun turned back to the screen. "Hello there. Sorry about the intrusion. We had a navigation malfunction. Are there any fees we need to pay, or forms we should fill out?" The alien's multiple eyes blinked in sequence, which Chun assumed meant confusion. "Fees? Forms? You dare speak of bureaucracy when you have trespassed in the domain of the hegemony." "Well, someone's got to handle the paperwork," Chun said reasonably. "We didn't mean to end up here. Our hyperspace drive had what my engineer calls a nervous breakdown. Is there someone we can talk to about getting directions back to human space?" The alien made a sound that the translator couldn't process properly. It came out as static mixed with what might have been disbelief. "Human space? You claim to represent an unknown species?" "Unknown? Oh, you guys haven't met humans before?" Chun brightened up. "Well, that's exciting. We're from Earth. It's about 25 light years from here. Assuming I remember the star charts correctly, this is impossible." The alien's voice rose higher. "No species achieves faster than light travel without joining the galactic community first." "Really? Huh. That seems like an inefficient system." Chun scratched her chin thoughtfully. "We've been using hyperspace drives for about 30 years now. Nothing fancy. Just enough to get around our local neighborhood for mining and trade." Behind the alien, Chun could see other creatures moving frantically around what looked like a command center. They were all talking at once, and their translated voices created a confusing babble of sounds. "Captain," Murphy whispered, "I think we might be in more trouble than we thought." "Nah. This reminds me of that time we accidentally flew into restricted airspace over the Pentagon," Chun said. "Lots of angry voices, lots of big ships. But in the end, they just wanted to make sure we weren't spies." The alien commander seemed to regain some composure. "You will allow our boarding parties to inspect your vessel and examine your technology." "Sure. No problem," Chun said. "Just mind the mess in the cargo hold. We're hauling fertilizer for the Mars colonies." "And some of the containers leak? Fertilizer?" "You know, plant food, nitrogen compounds, phosphates, that sort of thing." Chun paused. "You guys do have plants, right?" The alien stared at her for a long moment. "You transport biological waste products across interstellar distances?" "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds gross, but the Martian farmers pay good money for Earth-grade fertilizer. And we needed the work." The transmission cut off. Leaving the bridge in silence, Chun turned to her crew, who were all staring at her with expressions that ranged from admiration to horror. "Captain," Williams said carefully, "I don't think they were expecting us to be so cooperative." "Why wouldn't we be cooperative? We're the ones who made the mistake here." Chun shrugged. "Besides, they seem nice enough giant space lobsters with military fleets. But hey, we've seen weirder things." "Have we?" Park asked. "Remember that time we found those crystal formations in the asteroid belt that sang when solar wind hit them? Or when we discovered that fungus colony on Titan that grew in perfect mathematical patterns?" Chun smiled. "Galaxy's a weird place. The only thing that would really surprise me at this point is if we met aliens who were completely normal and boring." Murphy looked at the massive alien ships surrounding them. "Captain, I think we might be about to find out just how weird things can get." "Probably," Chun agreed. "But hey, at least it's not another routine cargo run to the outer planets. Those are so boring, they put me to sleep." The imperial capital world of Nexus Prime looked exactly like what Chun expected from a space empire. Massive spires that reached into the clouds, floating platforms that defied gravity, and more aliens than she could count. The hegemony escort ships had brought them here after 3 days of travel, during which Chun and her crew had been treated to what their captors called orientation materials. Honored guests, Supreme Commander Vexstar had called them. Though Chun noticed the force fields around their ship and the armed guards who accompanied them everywhere, the Supreme Commander looked like a cross between a mantis and a diplomat, with formal robes that probably cost more than Chun's entire ship. "Welcome to the heart of galactic civilization," Vexstar announced as they walked through the main plaza. "Here you will witness achievements that took our species millions of years to develop." Chun looked around at the floating vehicles, the gravity-defying architecture, and the energy fields that seemed to power everything neat. She said, "Reminds me of New Tokyo, but with more floating stuff." Vexstar's compound eyes twitched. "New Tokyo?" "Yeah, it's one of our megacities on Earth. They've got buildings almost this tall, plus maglev trains and those holographic advertising displays." Chun pointed at a massive screen showing what looked like a commercial for Starship fuel, though their ads are probably more annoying. The Supreme Commander stopped walking. "You have cities of this scale on your homeworld?" "Oh, sure, several of them. Earth got pretty crowded, so we had to build up instead of out." Chun shrugged. "Plus we've got those orbital habitats and the lunar colonies, of course. None of it's as shiny as this place. You guys really like your chrome and blue lighting." Behind them, Engineer Park nudged Communications Officer Williams. "Is it just me? Or does the captain seem completely unimpressed by all this?" "She's treating it like a business trip," Williams whispered back. I think she's actually bored. Their first stop was the Museum of Technological Achievements, where Vextar proudly displayed the crown jewels of hegemony science. A massive device hummed in the center of the main hall, bending space around itself and creating localized gravity fields. "Behold," Vextar said with obvious pride, "our gravity manipulation technology. This device can create artificial gravity anywhere in space, allowing us to build structures impossible by natural law." Chun walked around the device, hands behind her back, like she was inspecting a new piece of mining equipment. "How's the power consumption?" she asked. "Power consumption?" "Yeah. How much energy does this thing use?" "Our artificial gravity generators are pretty efficient, but they still eat up a lot of juice." Chun tapped the side of the device. "This looks like a bigger version of what we use on our space stations. Mind if I ask what kind of maintenance schedule you're on?" Vextar stared at her. "You possess artificial gravity technology?" "Well, sure. How else would we live in space for months at a time?" Chun looked confused. "I mean, nobody wants to deal with zero gravity when you're trying to eat breakfast or use the bathroom. That's just basic quality of life stuff." The Supreme Commander made rapid gestures to his assistants, who began talking frantically into their communication devices. They moved on to the next exhibit, which featured a device that could transform raw matter into any desired configuration. "Our matter conversion technology," Vextar explained. "With this, we can create any object from basic elements, food, tools, even complex machinery, all from simple raw materials." Chan examined the device with the same critical eye she'd used on the gravity generator. "What's your conversion efficiency rate?" she asked. "And how do you handle the energy requirements for complex molecular structures?" "You are familiar with matter conversion?" "Our replicators work on similar principles, just on a smaller scale," Chum said. "We mainly use them for food and basic supplies. The big industrial ones are too energy hungry for most applications. Plus, they tend to break down if you look at them wrong." Vextar's voice rose higher. "You have replicator technology? Doesn't everyone?" Chen looked genuinely surprised. "I mean, how else would you feed people on long space voyages? You can't carry fresh food for 6-month mining runs." The tour continued with displays of faster-than-light communication, quantum computers, and energy shields. Each time, Chen responded with polite interest and practical questions about maintenance, power consumption, and operational costs. Her crew began to notice that every alien they passed was staring at them with expressions that ranged from confusion to concern. "Captain," Murphy whispered as they examined a quantum prediction computer, "I think we might be making them nervous." "Why?" "We're being polite." "Yeah, but you keep acting like all this super advanced technology is normal." "It is normal," Chun said. "I mean, it's fancier than our stuff, but it's all logical extensions of what we already have. It's not like they've invented something completely impossible." The final exhibit was a massive holographic display showing the history of galactic warfare. Ships the size of moons battled across star systems, weapons that could crack planets, split asteroids like eggs, and entire civilizations rose and fell in the space of centuries. "This is the record of the Great Wars," Vextar said solemnly. "Conflicts that reshaped the galaxy and demonstrated the terrible power of advanced civilizations." Chen watched the display with the same expression she'd worn throughout the day, mildly interested, but not particularly impressed. "Looks pretty rough," she said. "We had something similar on Earth, though just on one planet, obviously much smaller scale." "You have experience with planetary warfare?" "Well, we had a couple of world wars in the 20th century, millions of casualties. Weapons that could destroy entire cities." Chun pointed at the display. "This reminds me of a documentary I watched about the Pacific Theater, though your ships are definitely bigger than aircraft carriers." Vextar turned to stare at her. You develop weapons capable of destroying cities? Oh, sure, nuclear weapons, chemical warfare, that sort of thing. Chang's expression darkened slightly. We try to keep the really dangerous stuff locked away now after some close calls. We decided that maybe having weapons that could end civilization wasn't the best idea. Close calls? You know, accidents, misunderstandings. People with more firepower than sense. Chun shrugged. Humans have a talent for building things that are way too powerful for our own good, so we learn to be careful. The Supreme Commander stood in silence for a long moment, processing what he'd heard. His assistants continued their frantic communications, and Chun noticed that more guards had appeared around the edges of the room. Tell me, Vextar said carefully, what do your people consider to be impressive technology? Chun thought about it. I guess anything that works reliably without breaking down every 5 minutes would be pretty impressive, she said. Most of our stuff needs constant maintenance and repair. We tend to assume that everything will fail at the worst possible moment, so we build in lots of backups and redundancies. You expect your technology to fail? Murphy's Law, Chun said cheerfully. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, usually at the worst possible time and in the most inconvenient way possible. Park leaned over to Williams again. I think I'm starting to understand why they look so confused, she whispered. We're not reacting the way they expected. How are we supposed to react? Probably with more awe and terror. Chun continued talking to Vextar about human engineering philosophy. Completely oblivious to the growing concern among their alien hosts, she treated the entire experience like a trade show, asking practical questions and making polite comparisons to human technology. What she didn't realize was that every question she asked and every casual comment she made was being recorded, analyzed, and transmitted to the highest levels of the hegemony government. The aliens were beginning to suspect that these primitive humans might be far more dangerous than they appeared. Chief Sinologist Kethron had studied over 400 different species during his career, but none had prepared him for humans. The insectoid scientist arranged his notes carefully on his desk and activated the holographic display system. He was determined to properly educate these strange aliens about the scope and scale of galactic civilization. Today we will discuss the true history of our galaxy, Kethran began, his forearms gesturing dramatically at the swirling star map that filled the room. You must understand the vast conflicts that have shaped billions of lives across millions of worlds. Captain Chun and her crew sat in comfortable chairs that had been specially designed for bipedal species. Chun had brought a cup of coffee from their ship's replicator and sipped it while taking notes on a small tablet. Sounds interesting, Chun said. We always enjoy learning about local history. Kethran activated the first historical sequence. The hologram showed massive fleets of warships, each one the size of a small moon. Behold the Andromedan Crusades. Fought 12,000 years ago, the Andromedan Empire commanded fleets of 10,000 vessels, each capable of sterilizing entire worlds. They conquered 47 star systems before the combined forces of the galaxy could stop them. Chun nodded politely. 47 systems? That's quite a reach for an ancient empire. How did they manage logistics across that kind of distance? Logistics? You know, supply lines, communication delays, keeping all those fleets fed and fueled. Chun took another sip of coffee. We have trouble coordinating mining operations across just our local system. The communication lag alone makes it a nightmare. Kethran blinked his compound eyes. The Andromedans possessed advanced quantum communication networks and automated supply systems. Ah, that makes sense. Chum made a note on her tablet. Still, Commanding that many ships across interstellar distances must have been incredibly complex. Did they have problems with commanders making independent decisions when they couldn't wait for orders? That is not the point of this lesson, Catherine said, his voice rising slightly. The point is the scale of destruction they caused. Billions died in the war. That's terrible, Chun said, her expression becoming more serious. Large-scale conflicts always cost too many lives. We had something similar on Earth in the 20th century. Though obviously much smaller scale, just one planet instead of 47 systems. Catherine stared at her. You experienced planetary warfare? Well, we called them world wars. But yeah, the second one alone killed around 60 million people. Chan shook her head sadly. Humans have a real talent for finding efficient ways to kill each other when we put our minds to it. We can be pretty thorough. Behind Chun, First Officer Murphy shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He'd noticed that their alien host looked increasingly disturbed by the captain's casual references to human military history. The Maiwei hologram shifted to show a different conflict. Ships that seemed to be made of living tissue fighting against crystalline structures that pulse with energy. The biocrystal wars. Catherine continued, two artificial species created by ancient civilizations, fighting a conflict that lasted 3,000 years. They consumed entire star clusters as raw materials for their war machines. Artificial species? Engineer Park leaned forward with interest. Like robots or something more advanced? Self-replicating, self-improving species designed specifically for warfare. Catherine explained. They turn matter itself into weapons. Huh. Chun said. That's concerning. We've been pretty careful about artificial intelligence development. After some early experiments went wrong. Your species has experimented with artificial intelligence? Sure, though we learned to be cautious about it pretty quickly. Chun smiled. First rule of human engineering. Assume anything smart enough to improve itself will eventually decide it doesn't need humans around. We keep our AI systems pretty limited in scope. Catherine made rapid notes on his own tablet. You have encountered rogue artificial intelligence? Not rogue. Exactly. More like AI that developed in directions we didn't expect. Chun waved her hand dismissively. Nothing planet-threatening. Just some systems that got too clever for their own good. We shut them down and redesigned from scratch. It's all about proper safety protocols. The xenologist moved to the next display, showing what appeared to be a weapon the size of a solar system. The massive construct was aimed at a star, which collapsed into a black hole as they watched. The Star Killer Array, Catherine said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Built by the hegemony's predecessors as the ultimate deterrent weapon capable of destroying entire solar systems. Chun watched the star collapse and whistled appreciatively. That's some serious firepower. How do you control something like that? I mean, what if it malfunctions? Control it? Wow. Any weapon that powerful has got to have some major safety systems. Chun looked thoughtful. What happens if the targeting system glitches, or someone inputs the wrong coordinates? Do you have abort procedures? The array was destroyed precisely because of such concerns. Catherine admitted. It was deemed too dangerous to exist. Smart move. Chun nodded approvingly. We've got a saying, just because you can build something doesn't mean you should. Usually applies to weapons that are way too powerful for anyone's good. Communications Officer Williams raised his hand. Excuse me, but did humans really build weapons like that? Not quite that big, Chun said. But we did develop weapons that could end civilization on our planet. Nuclear bombs, biological warfare, chemical weapons. We realized pretty quickly that having the power to destroy everything wasn't actually useful unless you wanted to destroy everything. And you chose not to use these weapons? Well, we used them a few times before we figured out how dangerous they were. Chen's expression grew somber. After we saw what they could do, most people decided that maybe we should find better ways to solve problems. Catherine activated the final display, a massive structure that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, bending space and time around itself. The Nexus Gate, he said, built by a species so advanced that they transcended physical existence entirely. They left this galaxy for dimensions beyond our understanding. Chun stared at the impossible geometry of the structure. Where did they go? Unknown, they simply vanished, leaving only this monument to their achievements. Huh. Chun tilted her head. That's actually pretty mysterious. Most of the ancient stuff we find has some kind of explanation, even if we don't understand it at first. You have discovered ancient artifacts? Oh sure, Earth's got lots of old ruins and mysterious structures. Chun shrugged. Stone circles, giant heads on islands. Pyramids that we're still figuring out. Most of them turn out to have perfectly reasonable explanations once you do enough research. Catherine set down his tablet and stared at the humans for a long moment. Captain Chun, I must ask, is there anything that would genuinely surprise your species? Chun thought about it seriously. Honestly? Probably aliens who were completely normal and boring, she said. I mean, most of the weird stuff we've seen has some kind of logical explanation behind it. The universe is a strange place, but it follows rules. Even the really weird rules make sense once you understand them. You find the galaxy's greatest civilizations to be normal? Not normal exactly, just comprehensible. Chun smiled. Big empires. Advanced weapons, artificial intelligence, ancient mysteries. We've got smaller versions of all that stuff on Earth. The scale is impressive, but the concepts are familiar. Catherine made more notes, his movements becoming increasingly agitated. And what would you consider to be truly advanced technology? Something that works perfectly every time without any maintenance or backup systems, Chun said immediately. Also, maybe technology that doesn't require huge amounts of energy or resources to operate efficiently. You prioritize reliability over power? Always. Chun nodded firmly. What good is a planet-killing weapon if it breaks down when you need it most? We learned a long time ago that simple, reliable systems beat complex, powerful ones every time. After the humans left, Catherine sat alone in his office, staring at his notes. He had intended to impress them with the scope of galactic civilization. Instead, he felt like he had been interviewing engineers who were critiquing his species' design philosophy. Activated his communicator and sent an urgent message to the High Command. Request immediate consultation with military intelligence. These humans are either the most advanced species we have ever encountered, or they come from a world so dangerous that galactic-scale warfare seems routine to them. The response came back within minutes. Bring them to the council chambers. We need to know which possibility is correct. The council chamber of the galactic hegemony was designed to intimidate representatives from 300 species sat in tiered seating that rose into the shadows above, while holographic displays showed the vast reach of their empire. The air itself seemed to thrum with power and authority. Captain Chun stood in the center of the chamber, looking around with the same mildly interested expression she'd worn throughout their visit. Her crew flanked her, equally unimpressed by the display. Supreme Chancellor Zorthik, a massive creature that looked like a cross between a dragon and a politician, loomed over them from the central podium. Humans, the Chancellor began, his voice echoing through the chamber. We have observed your reactions to our civilization. Your responses indicate that you possess technology far superior to what you have revealed. Chun looked confused. I'm sorry, superior to what? Your casual dismissal of our greatest achievements suggests that your species has developed beyond our current capabilities. The Chancellor's eyes narrowed. We demand that you share this advanced technology with the hegemony. Demand? Chun's eyebrows rose. That seems a bit aggressive for a first contact situation. Do not attempt deception. Chancellor Zorthak rumbled. No species treats gravity manipulation, matter conversion, and faster-than-light communication as routine unless they have surpassed these technologies. Chun turned to look at her crew, who all shrugged. I think there's been a misunderstanding, she said. We don't have superior technology. Our stuff is actually pretty basic compared to yours. Impossible. Your engineer critiqued our quantum computers as if they were primitive devices. Engineer Park stepped forward. I just asked about error correction protocols, she said defensively. Your quantum processors are way more advanced than ours, but they seem to have the same stability problems we deal with. Quantum states are inherently unstable, so you need constant error checking. You consider quantum instability to be a routine engineering problem? Well, yeah. Quantum mechanics is weird, but it follows rules. Park looked around the chamber nervously. Any quantum computer has to deal with decoherence and measurement errors. That's just physics. The Chancellor made a gesture, and a holographic display appeared showing the technical specifications of human technology pulled from their ship's computers. These are your specifications. They appear deliberately limited. Chun examined the display. Those look right to me. What's the problem? Your hyperspace drive operates on principles we do not recognize. Your power systems are absurdly over-engineered. Your computer networks assume multiple simultaneous failures. The Chancellor's voice rose. Yet you claim this is primitive technology. It's not primitive. It's practical, Chun said. We build everything assuming it's going to break at the worst possible moment, because it usually does. Why would you expect constant failure? Chun and her crew exchanged glances. Because that's what happens, Murphy said. Everything breaks Murphy's law, remember? If something can go wrong, it will. The Chancellor activated another display, this one showing Earth itself. The blue and green planet rotated slowly, looking peaceful and harmless. Tell us about your homeworld. Earth is nice. Most of the time, Chun smiled, though it can be a bit challenging to live on. Challenging how? Well, there are the natural disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis. Chun started counting on her fingers. Then you've got the biological hazards, poisonous plants, venomous animals, disease-carrying insects, bacteria that can kill you. The chamber had gone completely silent. Every alien representative was staring at Chun as she continued her casual description. The weather can be problematic too. Temperature swings from 50 below to 50 above Celsius, depending on where you are and what season it is. Chun paused thoughtfully. Oh, and the radiation. Our sun puts out enough radiation to cause cancer, so we have to be careful about exposure. Your star is attempting to kill you? One of the representatives whispered, not attempting. Exactly, it's just really energetic. Chun shrugged. Most life on Earth has adapted to deal with radiation exposure. It's not usually a problem unless you spend too much time outside without protection. Chancellor Zorthik leaned forward. Continue. Let's see. What else? Environmental toxins, predatory animals, parasitic organisms, viral infections. Chun was really warming up to the topic now. Oh, and weather systems that can generate winds strong enough to level cities. Lightning strikes that can kill you instantly, hailstones big enough to crush vehicles. Park joined in. Don't forget the geological instability. The planet's crust is constantly moving. So you get continental drift, mountain formation, and frequent seismic activity. Plus the atmosphere is only about 20% oxygen. Williams added, too much oxygen is toxic. Too little and you suffocate. It's a pretty narrow margin. The Chancellor's massive form had gone very still. Your planet is actively hostile to life? I wouldn't say hostile, Chun said. More like indifferent Earth doesn't care if we survive or not. So we have to be really good at adapting and surviving. That's why we over-engineer everything. Over-engineer? We assume everything will fail under the worst possible conditions. Chun explained. Multiple backups. Redundant systems. Fail-safes for the fail-safes. If we build something that only works when everything goes right, people die. A new voice spoke from the shadows above. What is the average lifespan of your species? About 80 years. Assuming you avoid accidents, disease, violence, and natural disasters, Chun said, though we've been working on extending that with medical technology. 80 years on a world that is constantly trying to kill you. Wow, when you put it like that, it sounds impressive. Chun smiled. But most people manage fine, you just have to be careful. Plan ahead, and always have a backup plan ready for anything. Expect the worst, hope for the best. Suddenly, alarm klaxons began blaring throughout the chamber. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. And automated voices began announcing something in multiple languages. Chancellor Zorthek rose from his seat. Panic evident in his massive form. Ancient defense systems are activating. Nexus Prime is under threat from pre-hegemony weapons. Through the chamber's massive windows, they could see energy beams lancing down from orbit. Striking at the planet's surface, the beams weren't random. They were targeting specific locations with surgical precision. How is this possible? One of the representatives screamed. The ancient systems have been dormant for millennia. Our most advanced technicians are attempting to shut down the orbital platforms, the Chancellor announced, but the technology is beyond our understanding. Chun walked over to one of the control consoles and examined the displays. Huh, she said. Looks like someone triggered an automated defense sequence. You can read those displays? Not exactly, but I recognize the pattern. Chun pointed at the screen. See these energy readings? They're building up to something big, probably a planet-wide sterilization protocol. The Chancellor stared at her. How do you know this? We found something similar on Mars, Chun said casually. Ancient automated defense system. Left behind by whoever lived there before it nearly fried our first colony ship before we figured out how to shut it down. You have encountered such systems before? A few times. The galaxy's full of old technology that still works. Chun studied the displays more carefully. Good news is, these systems usually have manual overrides. The bad news is, they're normally protected by multiple security layers. Our technicians cannot penetrate those layers. Chun turned to her crew. What do you think? Standard ancient doomsday device, or something more creative? Looks pretty standard to me, Park said. Orbital platforms, energy buildup. Systematic targeting, I guess it has about 6 hours before it hits full power. 6 hours? The Chancellor's voice cracked. How can you possibly know that? Experience, Chun said simply. Ancient civilizations love their countdown timers, usually gives defenders time to surrender or evacuate. She paused, fully. Course, if nobody surrenders or evacuates, then everybody dies, but that's probably the point. The chamber erupted in panicked voices as representatives from hundreds of species began shouting at once. Chun stood calmly in the center of the chaos, checking her watch. So, she said to the Chancellor, want us to take a look at this thing? We're pretty good with ancient technology that's trying to kill everyone. The orbital defense platform hung in space like a metallic spider. Its ancient hull scarred by millions of years of cosmic radiation. Captain Chen floated in her maintenance suit outside the main access port, while her crew worked to establish a connection to the platform's control systems. This is just like that time we had to fix the mining station near Europa, Chun said over the comm system. Same basic principle. Find the manual override. Assume everything else is broken, and don't trust any automated systems below them. The planet Nexus Prime continued to suffer under the platform's systematic attacks. The energy beams had already destroyed several major cities, and the hegemony's most advanced ships were powerless to stop the ancient technology. "Captain," Engineer Park called from inside the platform, "I found the control center. But there's a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The good news is, I recognize the interface design. The bad news is, it's definitely going to try to kill us when we start messing with it." Chun sighed. "Of course it is. Why would ancient aliens build anything that doesn't try to murder people?" She pulled herself through the access hatch into the platform's interior. The control center looked like something from a nightmare. Organic curves blended with crystalline structures, and everything pulsed with an eerie blue light. Holographic displays showed the planet below, marked with targeting coordinates that updated constantly. "Okay," Chan said, examining the setup. "This is definitely a doomsday device. Classic design, intimidating appearance, overly complex interface, and probably at least 3 different ways to accidentally trigger a complete planetary sterilization." First Officer Murphy pointed at one of the displays. "Captain, look at this. The system is counting down in multiple languages, including some I've never seen before. How much time do we have?" "About 2 hours before it moves from systematic destruction to complete annihilation," Chan nodded. "That's actually pretty generous. Most ancient doomsday devices only give you 20 minutes. She walked over to what looked like the main control panel. "Park, start looking for manual overrides, Williams. See if you can figure out what triggered this thing in the first place." "Captain," Communications Officer Williams called from across the room, "I think I found the activation log. The system came online when our ship first entered this system." "Our ship triggered this?" "Not exactly. It's scanning for something called unauthorized genetic markers." Williams paused. "According to this, it's specifically looking for descendants of the first civilization." Chun stopped what she was doing. "First civilization?" "The log is pretty detailed," Williams continued. "Apparently, this system was built to prevent the return of whatever species originally controlled this part of the galaxy." Park looked up from her work. "That's weird. Why would you build a defense system to keep out your own people?" "Maybe they weren't coming back as friends," Chun suggested. "Ancient civil wars tend to be pretty nasty." She turned back to the control panel. "Anyway, we need to shut this thing down before it sterilizes the planet." The next hour was a familiar routine for the crew. They approached the ancient technology the same way they approached everything else. Assume it would break. Plan for multiple failures, and always have a backup plan. Chun manually overrode safety systems that hadn't functioned in millions of years, while Park bypassed power regulators that tried to electrocute anyone who touched them. "You know," Chun said, as she rewired a control circuit that kept trying to set itself on fire, "whoever built this thing really didn't want people messing with it." Most ancient civilizations were pretty paranoid. Murphy agreed, though usually they had good reasons. "Found something," Williams called from the data center. "Captain, you need to see this." Chun finished her rewiring and walked over to Williams' station. The communications officer had activated what looked like a historical database, showing star charts that covered the entire galaxy. According to these records, the first civilization controlled most of the galaxy about 50,000 years ago. Williams explained, "They had technology that makes the current hegemony look primitive planet-sized ships. Weapons that could destroy star systems, the ability to manipulate time itself. So what happened to them? Civil war. The civilization split into factions and spent 10,000 years destroying each other." Williams pointed at the display. "By the time it was over, most of their technology was gone. Their worlds were uninhabitable, and the survivors had scattered." Chun studied the star charts, paying particular attention to one small section near the edge of the galaxy. "Williams, where is Earth on this map?" Williams adjusted the display. Zooming in on the area Chun had indicated, a small yellow star appeared, with several planets marked around it. "There," he said. "That's our solar system." The display updated, showing additional information about the system. During the height of the first civilization, Earth had been listed as emergency relocation site for refugees fleeing the Civil War. "Well, that explains a lot," Chun said. "What do you mean?" "Think about it. Earth is a death world that's constantly trying to kill everything on it. But humans survived and thrived anyway." Chun gestured at the display. "What if that's because we're descended from people who were already used to surviving in impossible situations?" Park looked up from her work. "You're saying we're the descendants of refugees from an ancient galactic war? It would explain why nothing in this galaxy surprises us," Chun said. "Our ancestors probably saw all of this stuff before. Maybe that's why we expect everything to fail, and why we're so good at fixing broken technology." "Captain," Murphy said quietly, "that would also explain why this defense system activated when we arrived." Chun nodded. "It's still looking for descendants of the first civilization. That's us." She turned back to the control panel. "Well, that's interesting. But it doesn't change our immediate problem. We still need to shut this thing down." The final shutdown sequence required precise timing and a lot of luck. Chun had to manually override 17 different safety systems, while Park rerouted power around components that had been failing for thousands of years. Meanwhile, Williams provided a running commentary on the countdown timer. 30 minutes to planetary sterilization. Williams announced 25:20. "Almost there," Chun muttered, her hands working frantically on the control circuits. "Just need to bypass this last failsafe," and the platform shuddered. Its lights flickered, and then everything went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the control center in red light. "Did we win?" Park Ashton checked her instruments. "Platform is powering down. The countdown has stopped." She activated her communicator Nexus Prime. "This is Captain Chun. The orbital defense system is offline. You're safe." The response came immediately. Chancellor Zorthic's voice, filled with relief and amazement. "Captain Chun, how did you accomplish what our best technicians could not?" "Practice," Chun said simply. "We've dealt with ancient technology before. It's all about expecting things to go wrong and planning accordingly." 3 days later, Chun found herself back in the council chamber. But this time, the atmosphere was very different. The representatives who had demanded her technology now looked at her with something approaching reverence. "Captain Chun," Chancellor Zorthak began, "our historical analysis has confirmed your origins. Your species are indeed descended from the first civilization." "That's nice," Chun said. "Does that change anything?" "It changes everything. The first civilization created the foundation of galactic society before their civil war destroyed them." The Chancellor paused. "We would be honored if humanity would consider taking a leadership role in the modern hegemony." Chun looked at her crew, who all shrugged. "What kind of leadership role?" "Overall coordination of galactic affairs, technology development, resource allocation, crisis management. Basically, you want us to run things?" "Yes." Chun considered this for a moment. "What's the pay like?" "Pay? You know, compensation, salary, benefits, healthcare." Chun smiled. "We're practical people. If we're going to take on the responsibility of managing a galactic empire, we want to make sure the terms are fair." The Chancellor stared at her. "You would treat leadership of the galaxy as a job?" "Well, somebody has to do the work," Chun said reasonably. "Might as well be people who are good at keeping things running when everything goes wrong." 6 months later, Captain Chun sat in what used to be the Chancellor's office, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The transition had gone remarkably smoothly, mostly because the humans approached galactic governance the same way they approached everything else. Assumed problems would arise, Plan for multiple contingencies. And always have backup systems. Her personal log entry for the day read, Month 6 of running a Galactic Empire status. About what you'd expect, everything is broken. Half the systems don't work properly. And we're dealing with approximately 17 different crises at once. On the plus side, this is pretty much what we expected. So we're handling it fine. At least it beats asteroid mining, she added, then got back to work.